The purpose of this video is to help us put SQ4R into practice with the article Extreme Poverty Returns to America. So you're going to need to have a copy of the article Extreme Poverty Returns to America, which is attached to Comprehension Strategy Number 6, SQ4R Textbook Reading Strategy. If you remember, the first step of SQ4R is survey, or to preview the article to help determine the thesis and the overview. So what I would like you to do is to pause this video and just to take 30 seconds to look over the article and see what you think it might be about, see what words jump out at you or ideas or concepts, and see if you can start to come up with an initial thesis to work with. So go ahead and stop the video, look over the article, and then come back. So what words, ideas, or concepts did you see in this article? Well, maybe you saw the word poverty, or safety net, or 1970s, inequality, future, economic. All these are things that this article talks about. And then what we want to do is create a working thesis. What do we think it's about? Well, looking at the title, Extreme Poverty Returns to America, as well as the note that's right below it, the UN finds growing numbers of Americans are living in the most impoverished circumstances. How did we get here? And by looking at the headings and kind of scanning the article, you might come up with this idea that the thesis could be that it discusses the issue of being poor in the United States and how it is increasing. So let's go with that as our working thesis. You might want to write that at the top of your article. Well, the next thing we're going to do is turn the headings into questions. And you'll notice there are 6 headings: the report from the United Nations, the beginning of the safety net, the rise of poverty since the 70s, growing inequality, and the future. Actually, there are 5. So what we're going to do is turn these into questions by adding who, what, where, when, why, or how. And you can do this right on the article. For example, what was the report from the United Nations? That can become our first heading, our first question. What was the beginning of the safety net? Why the rise of poverty since the 1970s? Why the growing inequality? What about the future? And so as we're reading this article, remember it's survey, question, and then read. I want you to highlight the article and keep in mind these questions that you have for each heading. So go ahead and annotate the article, add notes to it, underline, highlight, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and then come back to the video and we'll continue to discuss how to continue the SQ4R. After you've done your own annotation, when you read and record, you might want to go to my annotated article on D2L, where I have the whole article and how I labeled it and kind of the notes that I made. Our next step is to go to page 5 and create an outline. As you see, I've started my outline by using the title of the article, and then I thought about my thesis, which discusses issues of poverty increasing in the United States, especially extreme poverty, and that's what I'm going to use for my thesis. I have the question, what was the report from the UN? And then as I read and I looked back at my notes, this is what I said. Point 1, it documented homelessness, unsafe sanitation, and other issues affecting Americans. It found poverty is rising and affecting all Americans, and it was a 15-day tour of the U.S. So I've looked at the article, and now I'm going to write what I think are the answers to this question in this outline. I can do that for letter B as well. What was the beginning of the safety net? Well, if you look at the article, it talks about that the late 19th and 20th century, the gap between the rich and poor was growing, that leaders agreed better for society if there was a basic standard of living, and white middle class helped with housing and education assistance. And again, I've gone back to the article, taken the notes, things that I highlighted or added notes, and made them into my outline. Another point that I thought might be helpful in this section was others helped by programs like Social Security, minimum wage, food stamps, etc. You can either copy this onto the outline on page 5, or you can try your own hand at filling in this outline. The third question is, why has poverty been rising since the 1970s? And I found a number of reasons that were in the article, and I found these reasons like labor laws protecting the workers were ending, funding education and public programs declining, the number on welfare has decreased while poverty has risen, and then I thought it was interesting that deep poverty equals 1/2 the poverty threshold, and the extremely poor live on less than $2 a day. Well, what I would like you to do is to keep going with this outline. I've given you A, B, and C and some of the subpoints that I think are important, but I'd like you to finish the outline with D, why the growing inequality, and E, what about the future? And then you'll notice I also included 3 questions that you can be part of your review down below. So your assignment for SQ4R number 6 is to finish this outline, to have read and annotated the article, and hopefully with that you will have a good understanding of this article about extreme poverty returning to America. And I hope that made sense, and I will see you next class.